Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Scuttlebutt. Before we dive into the episode, we are very proud to welcome and celebrate our first sponsor. D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage began as a small hauling and used auto parts operation in the Pittsburgh area in the late 1970s and has grown into a full-service metal recycling company with two locations, Lawrenceville and Tarentum. These are state-of-the-art scrapyards with deep roots in the community and a strong commitment to the service of their customers. D&D accepts all types of metal, both ferrous and non-ferrous, that may be generated by industrial manufacturing, construction and demolition, small commercial entities, as well as individual customers. They have a wide variety of material handling equipment and are capable of managing any job in a timely and efficient manner. You can contact them for quotes and availability at dndautosalvage.com. That's D&D autosalvage.com. Thank you, D&D, for supporting this podcast. And now on with the show.
And that's the reason why we need to get these younger veterans involved so that we can, take care of our veterans in our local communities and to give back to our local communities, because that's what the VFW, that's our purpose. Whether it's a veteran or a community, that's what we want to do.
Welcome, everyone, to an episode of The Scuttlebutt. I'm your host, Sean Hall, the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. Our mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. I am excited for the program this week and what we are calling the Evolving VFW. If you've ever been driving and you pass by a VFW and you've had the same thought that I've had is, I think that's a place for veterans, and could I visit there? You've come to the right place to listen in. And thank you for joining us. And if you'd be so kind, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube so you are the first to know when we release new episodes of Scuttlebutt every Monday. And if you have a comment about this episode, please email me at Sean, that's SHAUN, the difficult spelling, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. I'm going to go right to our guest today and go around the room and let them introduce themselves. All members of the VFW and in different, would you say ranks? Is that there are different ranks within the VFW, just like in the military?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, Jess, let's start with you. You and I have talked for a while about doing this episode, so I think I can give you the floor first to introduce yourself. Thanks for joining the Scuttlebutt.
Thanks, Sean, for having me. Sean and I have a history. I've been on some veteran breakfast clubs in the past, talking about 9/11 and VFW stuff. So Sean and I talked about we want to get the VFW out there. The VFW is evolving, like Sean has said. So my background is I was a Marine. I served from 98 to 02, active duty. And then in 2003, I was presidential recalled. I was in college, minding my own business, and I was activated. And I was brought up to Evansburg Truck Company, and I was activated to go to Operation Iraqi Freedom. I served there during the invasion, and that's how I became a VFW eligible member with my service over in Iraq. I came back, did a couple years here and there, reserve. My grandma, she's World War II. She got out as a sergeant in E5. So I was only in E4 at the time. I wanted to pick up E5 to be the same equivalent rank as my grandma. So that's why I kept going in to pick up that E5. And then after that, I was doing meaningless jobs and trying to find my purpose again, because as a veteran, we all know we've had a purpose that was bigger than us when we served our country. And my family was social members in the American Legion. My parents didn't serve. And then I joined the VFW because I'm a veteran of foreign war. So that's where it started back in, I want to say 2000 and maybe 5 or 6. I was in the Trenum VFW here in Pittsburgh. And then I started joining once I established a good job and I was able to work and volunteer at the same time. I joined VFW 8430 here in Pittsburgh, the East McKeesport VFW. They brought me in the ranks. I was the first female regular member. I started picking up office there. I never got to commander just because my husband's the quartermaster at that post. He's also a regular member at the VFW. We didn't want that conflict or that whatever. So I started to get involved in the district. And then I worked my way up to district commander here in District 29, which is Allegheny County. This is and I was just reelected for a second term.
Congratulations. And are you were one of the first, or were you the first female district commander?
I was the first district commander in District 29.
In District 29, have there been other female district commanders throughout the VFW history?
There has, yes. Not very many. I know last year there was only 2 of us out of, what are we at, Jim? 26 districts or 27 districts now. There's only 2 of us. And then I'm not sure. I think there'll be 2 of us again this year, I believe.
Okay. Thank you, Jess. Thank you for that intro. We'll jump over to Brian next. Brian, welcome to the Scuttlebutt.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, kind of like Jess. I come from a family of veterans, both branches of the Marine Corps and the Army. I grew up with that upbringing. I had a calling very early. I always knew I wanted to join the Marines. I went into the Marine Corps, actually delayed entry when I was 17, and then subsequently, when I turned 18, went to the Marine Corps. I did 4 years active duty infantry. I was over in Subic Bay, Philippines, doing jungle operations for 2 years. So like, I'm a little bit different than Jess. So I qualify for the VFW through combat action pay and imminent danger pay, based on where I was at. Again, 1990, I went in before Desert Storm. Even though I'm that time period, a Desert Storm vet, it was actually the places I was overseas, and again, in the infantry, doing jungle operations against communist Muslim insurgencies overseas. I got out of the Marine Corps in 93, used my GI Bill. I thought I was going to be a history teacher, ran into a buddy that talked me into going into law enforcement. I've been a police officer, recently retiring on medical issue. I did 26 years in law enforcement, but early in my law enforcement career, I ran into another buddy that was a reserve MP, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come into the reserves? You're already doing police work." I checked into an MP unit, basically got put in training. I trained the MPs on infantry tactics, redeployed overseas again with in the Marine Corps. And then in 99, I actually got out of the Marine Corps altogether, mainly for career opportunities within law enforcement. And in between that, I joined the VFW in the 90s, was kind of, at that time, I was in my late 20s, and the VFW really wasn't a place I wanted to hang out because there's a lot of older guys. And it just really, I knew that was a place for veterans. However, at the time period of my life, it really didn't suit what I was looking for as far as hanging out and having a beer. It wasn't until years later that one of my neighbors approached me and says, "Hey, you need to go down to the VFW. Those guys need help." So I came down to my post, which is Herbany, PA, post 8427. We're in Westmoreland County in Pennsylvania. Went to the post and I walked in. I looked around. I've been in VFWs all across the country before, and my particular post at the time kind of looked like a sports bar, and it kind of got me a little worked up. And I didn't like the vibe, basically. And I went to the next month's meeting, and then basically pushed forward on a mission statement for my post to make it look like a VFW and make it a place where veterans, young veterans, older veterans, didn't matter, a place where veterans felt comfortable, almost like in their man cave. Like when they came in there, they looked around on the walls, they saw something that either reminded them of their own service or a family member's service. And that's been like my mission statement at my post for like the last 2 years. I am the commander of my post. I recently was reelected a second term, and I was able. That was one of the other things I did at the time when I initially joined about 5 years ago. There were a lot of older veterans, and I was the youngest guy in my late 40s. Okay, so I was like, well, how to make it a place for veterans, I got to get some young guys in here. And I actively sought out veterans either my age or younger than me. And right now, my youngest regular member is 23 years old. He's still serving. He came in from deployment, did a lifetime membership. My average board member is in her mid 30s. When I call it the new regime, when we came in and took over, I kept a guy on my board as my junior vice. He's 84, and he'd been involved in the VFW for 30 some years. And again, new to the VFW, I needed that knowledge, but our post needed to change a direction. And that was, instead of just turning the lights on, serving beers and shots, we got to do things for veterans. We got to bring in young guys. We got to do things for the community, and then we make money. And that's kind of been my mission statement that I've been doing for the last couple of years.
That's awesome, Brian. And you brought up a lot of points that we're going to get to later on here in the episode. Last on the list, but certainly not least, Jim, thank you for joining the Scuttlebutt.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for having me. My name's Jim Brown. I'm an 8-year Air Force veteran. I traveled the world quite a bit as well. I've been Saudi Arabia, Kosovo, Albania. I spent a year in Korea. I've been to Turkey and Cairo and a few other places that I can't remember. But it was definitely a pleasurable experience being in the military. And it gave me the opportunity to join the VFW. I joined somewhat late. I could have joined earlier in my military career because I went in 94. I actually gained eligibility in 95 when I went to Bosnia, but I didn't sign up for the VFW till I went to Korea in 2000. And just because I guess that was the thing to do then, because it was either go to a place like that or go to some other places that are a little more shady. So I'm currently the national legislative chairperson for the Department of Pennsylvania. So I get to travel to Capitol Hill and talk about legislation for veterans, and let us not forget their families as well, because a lot of legislation we fight for involves just the family members of, widows, widowers, and things like that. Right now we're focusing heavily on toxic exposures and female legislation to try to get the VA up to speed a little bit more. I'm the District 28 commander, which covers Erie, Mercer, and Crawford counties here in Pennsylvania. And I've just recently been reelected back to that position for the upcoming year. I'm currently the post 5958 commander in Titusville, Pennsylvania. It's my 3rd year on. I told him that I wasn't taking a position this year so that I could focus a little more on legislation in the district. So I agree with everything that Jess and Brian said. I will correct Jess on one thing. She said she was a Marine. Most Marines, a real Marine, would say I'm still a Marine.
Thanks, Jim. I always feel bad saying I am a Marine, because then they're like, "Where are you serving?" And I don't want to be like, I'm not trying to elaborate or anything, but you are correct. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah. So, and the whole philosophy of getting the VFW back to a VFW, I preach that at all my meetings I go to when I visit my post. One of my things is we have 4 walls here, and these walls were put up to take care of veterans. They weren't put up to give drinks and cheap, food. And it's really what we're put there is to take care of the veterans, and we need to get back to that. So.
Awesome. And you brought up a couple more points that I'd like to get to later as well. Before we do all that, on the Scuttlebutt, we usually have a segment of a word or a phrase of the day or the week. This one's going to be an abbreviation, which is just VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. I kind of want to define the history a bit of what the VFW is and demystify it a touch, because like I said, I drive past a VFW and I've always been like, what goes on in there? I'm a civilian, non-veteran. Am I allowed in there? Before we get to that, let's talk a bit about the history of the VFW. How did the VFW come to be? And we'll start in 1899. I think that's whenever the idea, the seeds of what the current VFW is began. And I'm gonna tax you guys on giving me sort of a history lesson in what the VFW is. Jess, would you like to kick us off?
I do. I did some research.
Immediately
I
right
went.
now, just on your phone, or
I'm not going to diverge my intel, but yeah. So it was actually three organizations that formed into one organization, which we now call the VFW. So it was, as I'm looking, it was like this. It started back with the Spanish-American War veteran. They started the Colorado Society, Army of Philippines. So that was organized in Denver. And then shortly thereafter, they started the American Veterans of Foreign War. And then it actually started here in Pennsylvania, where the VFW first started. So whenever they all came together, they formed the Veterans of Foreign Wars here in Pennsylvania. And I will tell you this, a little tidbit. I know this for a fact. I've been there. Down in Oakland, across from Soldiers and Sailors, where Pitt is, there's actually a plaque that was where the first VFW was founded. So the actual first VFW was here, started in Pittsburgh, in my district. So
and it was in August of 1913. So it took about 14 years for these three different organizations to come together under one banner.
Correct. Yes. And we can, I mean, as a VFW member, I can see why, just because of the dying numbers and stuff, we are stronger in numbers. So, I mean, I can see why that happens. Jim, do you want to elaborate, or Brian want to elaborate on the history of the VFW?
And you guys knew those guys that were like forming the VFW, right?
Yeah.
Not me.
We rib. If we're gonna rib on the Scuttlebutt, we got to rib between branches, and we'll rib a little either way.
Yeah.
So I would say Brian and Jim are closer to knowing them than I am. I will say that.
Yeah, hey, but we're still somewhat young compared to most of the people that are active in the VFW.
Right.
And that's one of the stigmas you look at when you drive by. You think, well, it's just a building full of a bunch of old crotchety old veterans, and they're drinking and smoking. That's the philosophy we're really trying to steer away from, and because it's not the truth. I mean, sure, it's a good place for us veterans to hang out. The camaraderie is there. People understand each other in there. You yourself said you don't understand a lot of veteran lingo or mindset, and it gives us a place to sit and be with somebody, even if we're not talking, they still get us, and that's hard for most of us veterans, to sit in a gathering that people don't get us, and we're really trying to get more family oriented, trying to get the younger generation in there, trying to get the voice and the eyes of society to open up, that it's not males that are veterans. As you can see, Jess down there is definitely not a male, she's a female. And there's a lot of them out there. I mean, it's a growing population in the military, and it's going to continue to grow. So we need to make sure we're getting that word out there, that we need family, and reaching out, that veteran does not mean a male gender.
Right. And I do know that as of 2020, the VFW has 1.6 million members and auxiliary members, which we'll sort of touch on a little bit later as well. This is forming 6,000 local chapters known as posts, and grouped into 52 departments covering the 50 states, the Asia Pacific area, and Europe, which is something I didn't know. And the mission of the VFW is actually to foster camaraderie among United States veterans of overseas conflicts, to serve our veterans, the military, and our communities, to advocate on behalf of all veterans. And I think that's sort of leads me to my first main question about the VFW is,
John, ahead. Can I just interrupt real fast?
Of course.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So go back what Jim said. That's the reason why the VFW was started. It was to rehabilitate, the veterans, assist veterans, widows, and orphans and dependents of needy and disabled veterans. So that's how it started. And we have been doing that for years, but what Jim, Brian, and I, what we're trying to do, the older veterans are, disabled now. Vietnam had the Agent Orange, and a lot of them have other elements because of their age, and we have that big gap. So we're trying to, it was let go for a while, and we are trying to bring it back to the community in our local areas. I'm not saying this doesn't happen across the nation, because it does. I see a lot of wonderful things that VFWs are doing across the nation. But, we are an older area. Pittsburgh is, we're pretty old. The first VFW started here in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
So, some of my posts, I probably have 15 or 20 of my posts that hit 75 to 100, anniversaries already. So,
75 to 100, like their age.
Their age, correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we are going back to that. And that's the reason why we need to get these younger veterans involved, so that we can, take care of our veterans in our local communities, and to give back to our local communities, because that's what the VFW, that's our purpose. And as a veteran, that's what we serve to do. We serve to, serve people, whether it's a veteran or a community, that's what we want to do.
So what I find interesting is I've heard the words like qualify. What made me eligible. So not every veteran can join a VFW. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so only veterans who have served overseas are eligible or qualified to become members of a VFW.
Yes, but no. Like Brian, go ahead and explain yours. Not that you weren't overseas, but.
Yes. So typically a regular member of the VFW served, say, in Iraq, Afghanistan, again in Kuwait, or some version of that, Vietnam, Korea. Veterans like me, we served in basically a version of police actions, where we were paid intimate danger or combat pay for being like something like Somalia or Grenada, or again, a police action. And or some veterans served in Korea on a parallel. So those type veterans are also eligible to be regular members of the VFW.
Okay. All right. So yeah, thank you. That helps to sort of like clarify to me like the veterans that are coming into this into the organization. Now we've talked about the posts. Are the posts pretty much just so that you can have a specific building that all of the veterans in that particular region can then attend? What are the posts and why are they there? Why are there so many? Like I think there are over 16 in Pittsburgh area, Western PA alone. Are there more?
I actually have 36 in my district.
And how big is your district?
All of Allegheny County. So we have,
okay.
Yeah, and Allegheny County is huge, So I will say out of the 36, 35 of my VFWs have a physical location. I have one post, 914 in West Mifflin. They meet at the Athletic Association Club in West Mifflin. So not all of them have a physical location. They have a charter. So I have 37 that have, or 36 that have charters. So we don't know how the post like started. I guess like they found a building and they're like, hey, let's start meeting here. Let's start, building this place up. But my West Mifflin post that just has the charter and not the physical place, it does just as good as the VFWs that have an actual location with membership, with fundraising, with volunteering. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have a specific building.
What is the charter?
The charter is what you get whenever you form. You have to have, what is it, Jim? 8 members or 10 members or?
Yeah, I think it's 10, but don't quote me on that. You have to have X amount of members and submit to the National VFW, and they give you a charter number. Like mine's 5958. Every post has its own number that you're chartered, and it becomes yours as long as you follow the bylaws that are set out there by the National Association.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
When you see a post, for instance, Brian's 8427, I'm 8430. My original post, we're like 3 posts behind Brian that were formed.
Okay, so the number is sequential. The newest one could be 8431, then 8432.
Correct. That's correct.
Yes.
See, I'm learning so much in just the first 5 minutes of this conversation. I didn't know that.
So my post was founded by World War II veterans, and my particular building was purchased from the coal mine in 1947. And I have my charter members who I have their names on the wall, it's on the plaque, and they started this post. And this year is my 75th year anniversary.
Oh, wow. Is there a way, this goes down the rabbit hole just a touch with that thought, is there a way that you pay homage to like the history of that, the you know, it's been there for 75 years, the original members, like, you know, how do you do that?
Well, that's like my post also is 75 years old this year, and we have what our charter, with the charter, obviously you have charter members who gained that charter, and I have one charter member left. He's in a home, and unfortunately with the restrictions of COVID, he wasn't allowed to come to our last anniversary. But we did reach out to him. Our state commander was here and reached out to him as well. And you have the lineage of the post per se hanging off. Most posts do, hanging all throughout the post building, things that have just gone on from day one to current.
And so these posts, these buildings, they're all spread around. What is the purpose of each particular chartered post?
To serve veterans.
Serve veterans specifically. Now, me as a non-vet, am I even allowed to enter the building?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's say I do that. Say I go down to, let's say, Upper St. Clair, and I walk in. How do I engage into that space? How does a civilian supposed to carry themselves in a VFW?
I mean, so you can just walk in, talk to the canteen staff.
Mhm.
I would recommend asking for like an officer if they're there. If not, I would ask to fill out a social application. Unless you have a family member that has served in a conflict, you know, or a war, or in Brian's case, you know, like overseas, you can also be an auxiliary member. So it's not just for the veterans, it's also for their family members and also the community. So it goes from, you know, the regular veterans to the auxiliary, which would be our family. And then it would be the social members, which is typically our community members who want to contribute to the VFW and to the veterans cause. So yeah, you can go down or just walk in. I would just talk to see if there's an officer available. A lot of times they'll give you their number. Just call the commander or whoever they give you and just talk to them. You know, Jim, and we're always available. You can reach out vfw.org, find out who your district commander is or your post, and they will be happy to help you. And we want the social members, we want the auxiliary, because, you know, we need that support to continue our missions to help veterans and also to help our community.
And with
Yeah,
that being said, Jess, a lot of our social members and our auxiliaries are actually the ones that do the majority of the volunteering. Because even some of us younger veterans, like Jess said earlier, there's a lot of our older veterans are, you know, not moving very well anymore.
Mhm.
And some of us younger veterans are in the same boat. And our auxiliaries and our social members help out a lot with our volunteerism in the community and stuff like it. In Pennsylvania, I don't know if it is the only one or it's one of the only ones that allow social members in their VFWs. They're the only ones that recognize. I don't know if it's the only one. I think it might be the only one, but there might be a few more. But most
How do you know
states
the
don't.
difference? How do you know the difference between one that allows the social members and ones that don't?
You have a membership card.
Okay.
Every level, whether you're social, auxiliary, or post regular member, you are assigned a membership card.
So this, you know, this sort of opens up the mind here a bit. Is like, you know, me passing by a VFW, I always sort of felt like that's an exclusive club and I shouldn't go in there. But you know, that this definitely already makes me want to go into the Upper St. Clair VFW and just say hi.
Please do.
Yeah, I think that's just fantastic knowledge to have. So, you know, part of what I've been hearing you guys say is this sort of like community building and this outreach. How is there a reason that you think that this idea has happened in the civilian mindset of like, I passed by a VFW and that's not for me to go into? And how do you sort of redefine that VFW that's open and welcoming to everyone?
Can I just
I can speak to that a little bit. You mind, Jess?
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
So my post is a little bit unique from other VFW posts in the fact that I have a bowling alley attached to my building. Okay. So before I took over and in the past, it was kind of a private, like private club thing that the guys, they ran the bowling alley with like 1 or 2 leagues, and the veterans would do their thing and the social members, and that was it. When I took over, I turned the bowling alley actually into a business, run it like a bowling alley. But the main thing was to bring in the community. For instance, my local high school has a bowling team. I pay for all their bowling for free, all their travel expenses when they do travel and bowling tournaments. And that has turned into a thing where before, a lot of people, even in my town, didn't even know we had a bowling alley or where the VFW was located. Now everybody knows where it is. And that has to deal with, again, younger guys using technology, advertising, Facebook, different things, putting it out there that the older guys kind of really didn't do that. This was their post. They thought everybody knew what they were about, and they let it at that, turn the lights on, serve beer. Again, my mission statement when I first took over was, we're going to do things for veterans first, then the community. And when I say the community, my goal was to be the biggest footprint in my community, that if there was a tragic event in the community, we would be able to render aid financially or use my facilities somehow to assist the community. And I wanted everybody to know that there's a VFW in this town, that we're active and we're out there for the community, including during COVID. Again, Jess inspired this for me, was running a food bank out of my post. Initially, it was for veterans only, but the amount of food that was donated to my post allowed me to also give to the community food relief during COVID.
I'm sure that was sort of cyclical. I mean, you made these steps to invite the community in, and then you start a food drive, and the community has started to develop that relationship with you and felt more comfortable saying, hey, we want to donate to this VFW and to the veterans that are involved in this post, right?
Yes.
Jess, what was
Go
what
back
were you going to say?
not only is the social member, like a lot of civilian, like I guess community members feel unwelcome coming into the VFW. I will say, when I first came to the post that I'm at, I didn't feel welcomed, because when I walked in, I'm a female veteran. I mean, I clearly look like, I look like a female. I don't look like I served in the Marine Corps. I'm not saying there's a type, but I guess, the civilians have that stereotype of what a veteran actually looks like. So my husband served 24 years. He had the shaved head, he had the built and stuff. We walk in and they hand my husband the application to be a regular member. And the canteen staff told me that social memberships were closed. And I felt really offended. And I was like, oh my God, like, okay, but can I have a regular membership card? We started to change that. And I guess, breaking that stereotype. And, Sean, I've talked about this numerous times, like, we have to start making the younger veterans welcome, especially the females, because, I mean, it is intimidating. I won't lie. When you walk into the door, you have to ring the buzzer. You open the door and like everyone's looking at you. You're walking in and you're like, oh crap, am I supposed to be here? Like, you just don't know. So I can tell you, with the leadership that we put that has been in place, we are improving the way the VFW is seen, with social media and, through stuff like this, so that we can break that stereotype and break the change and invite everybody into the VFW. We have open houses, we have community events. We've been doing a lot. And like Brian said, during COVID, we were stuck. Like, what do we do now? Right. And, as a veteran, you just keep pushing forward. So we started the food bank. I got registered with the Greater Allegheny Food Bank Pantry so that I could be a registered food bank. So I'm like, hey, Brian, I got all this food. Let's, let's help our communities. And, Brian is Westmoreland County, but he's literally like right down the road from me. So it was easy for us to partner. And so, we started to break these molds, and we started to break these stereotypes.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna
it's
say,
not just, oh, go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
I was gonna say because what I heard Brian saying was like, is the Smoky Bar, or like it used to be like a sports bar, and everybody in Pittsburgh kind of knows, everybody everywhere kind of knows what a sports bar is, and it's like, how do you make that evolution to a more community based, almost like a restaurant or like a club, but a more inclusive club, like a community club. So like, how has that transition gone over the last like decade or so?
Yeah, well, I did a couple of things. So when I took advantage of COVID, when we were shut down and we did have money at the at the post, we did a lot of construction. We got rid of the dingy carpet. We put down ceramic tile. We painted the walls, put up a ton of military things from all branches of service. And one of the big things we did is we went non-smoking. And when we initially, and myself and a couple other regular members started discussing that idea, the older veterans were like, we're going to lose members, we're going to shut down, we're going to lose business. And honestly, within 2 weeks, my membership has increased from the community. I'm in a unique, my geographically, as far as bar restaurants go, I really don't have a lot of competition. I do have a restaurant down the road, and I have a Dairy Queen down the road. So one of the other things I did was I hired a real cook, and I opened my kitchen from 4 to 8, 5 days a week, with real food, a variety of food on the menu, where families can come here and eat very good food, relatively inexpensive, and that's helped bring people in. And of course, with the non-smoking, people are going to bring the kids in,
Right.
and being a parent myself and having 3 kids, I mean, that was important to me as a VFW member, that my kids be aware of what the VFW is and grow up in that atmosphere.
Yes, one thing that we've sort of talked about a lot here on the Scuttlebutt, and I'm glad that you brought up the idea of walking in and getting that application, Jess, is this idea of walking into a space as a civilian and allowing yourself to see everybody in the room as potentially a veteran, and not diving straight into the stereotype of I think that person's definitely a veteran and that person's not. How do you think that sort of helps you understand the space a bit more, understand how to communicate with the community a bit more?
So just being out there, for instance, we just had an event here at the VFW for Memorial Day, and I actually showed up to, I want to say I did 14 memorials that day. I stopped at a whole bunch in Southside. I did one in Coriopolis, and I said, just being out there, I keep, that's why I'm out there a lot, is because I'm a female, and I want people to see me. I wear my VFW uniform, I wear my VFW hat, and I'm out there, and I want people to, to understand, like, there's no one mold for a veteran. I mean, look at Brian and Jim. Like, I love Brian to death, but would you think he was a Marine? Do you know what I mean? Because everyone is, they think the Marine has the high and tight, they're clean shaving, and and I mean, I still have older Vietnam guys who do, you can tell that they're a Marine and they have that high and tight, but it's not like that anymore. Our younger veterans are growing out their facial hair. I mean, from what I hear, it sucks shaving your face every day. I mean, I don't know, because I don't have that problem, but what I can tell with the legs, I mean, it does suck. So I can imagine your face. They're giving their face time to heal from shaving their face, and having razors on their head all the time. So I've been just preaching it, and I actually did a training at Brian's VFW with his bar staff, because he was getting a lot of pushback, like they weren't treating everybody equally, and it's from the old the old bar staff, and it's unfortunate, but Brian and I came up with the training. I said, hey Brian, I'll come out and talk to your staff, let's see if this works. And actually they were like, their eyes like lit up, and they're like, oh, I never understood, like I never get it. So it's education is key. And going out to the high schools, going out to the community events as a female and as a younger veteran, and not have that high and tight and not have that shaved face. We want them to see us as we are now. I mean, we served our country honorably. It's time to let us be who we are now.
Mhm.
And if we want to shave our face out, we don't have a regulation that says we have to shave our face. So let's continue to like just be aware. No, you don't know, and when you're walking past people, you don't know unless they have that USMC hat on or whoever. And I treat everybody when they walk in, if they're a veteran, they as they're walking in as potential veterans, and I treat them as such. And I treat all people as kind. So regardless.
But I could see how, like, a veteran walks into a VFW as opposed to a non-veteran, and veterans do have that sort of VIP-ness whenever they walk into a VFW. That is their space. That is something that I've come to understand through the Scuttlebutt, is that there is a different language in the military culture, and I think it's important that when veterans transition back to civilian life, they have a space to be able to like go and sit down and not have to be asked all the civilian questions. Like the guy next to you served. You guys have an understanding of what that is, and I think that's really great. I'm just happy to know that I can now go to a space with veterans and talk to them about stuff. Is what we try to do with the Veterans Breakfast Club.
Sean, can I add a little bit to what Jess was saying?
Totally.
As far as the way veterans kind of look and carry themselves nowadays versus, decades ago, the majority of veterans, younger veterans, you won't see roaming around with their, I served in Iraq hat or their wartime garb, if you will.
Mhm.
It's just not commonplace for the younger veteran for some reason. Um, and and as far as like Jess said, being a female, she gets asked to come out and do things a lot more, and sometimes that's a touchy scenario. It's like, do you ask the female because the female's a female,
Mhm.
or do you bypass the female because you're afraid to ask the female because she's a female? So my Memorial Day celebration we had here, I actually had I had a female guest speaker, and it was the Amy McKenzie, who's the Department of Pennsylvania Women's Veterans representative for the VFW,
Mhm.
and she came all the way up from Philadelphia. Probably one of the better speakers we've ever had here in my little small town of 5,000 people.
Mhm.
And but just getting the female out there and the female voice out there is very important.
Mhm. And that has sort of been a part of this evolving VFW.
Right.
Is there are more females serving, there's more people of color serving, and getting them involved in the VFW to, when they come back, to help expand the community more. And Jim, I want to get to this point because part of what the VFW was invented for was advocacy for veterans, and I know part
Yeah.
of that the VFW has either helped or spearheaded was the VA, the GI Bill. Our audience has
Yeah.
probably heard of either or both. Those are pretty important organizations and programs. Can you talk to me a bit about what the advocacy of the VFW is? There's this community aspect. We want to be in the community. We want to get members, but there's also this aspect of supporting veterans all the way up to the state and national level.
Yeah, our main purpose of the VFW is the veteran. I
Mhm.
mean, that's first and foremost.
And that's the
And
motto, right? No one does
no
more
one
for
does more
veterans.
for veterans,
Yeah.
correct? And so what I do, being a national legislative rep, I do advocate for legislation on Capitol Hill. We meet with all the, well, mostly staffers, but we meet with twice a year people from Capitol Hill, and I also on a monthly basis I'm interacting, via email or phone calls or whatever with Capitol Hill staff on different legislation that's out there
Mhm.
to better the lives of our veterans, whether they're a wartime veteran or a veteran that was lucky, and I will say lucky enough not to be a eligible VFW member,
Mhm.
because sometimes I feel, if you're not able to, you're kind of lucky that you're not able to in most instances.
Mhm.
Um, we advocate a lot for, I mean, just look at our veterans that have been fighting for Agent Orange for forever. I mean,
Right.
it's an ongoing battle, and we've really come a long way in the last few years. We've got a lot of presumptive illnesses added on to Agent Orange. Right now we're working on a couple bills that just got introduced just this past week for, we're trying to get a comprehensive toxic exposure bill passed through the House and the Senate so that we can stop piecemealing, does this presumption, blah, blah, blah. We're trying to get blanket it all into one so that, it'll cover all eras and all toxins, forever. And a few other things that just got passed last year, well, in January, was a widow's tax, which I was saying, don't forget about the family members. They call it a widow's tax, but I mean, obviously it's a widow, widower. And what that does is it makes it so their surviving spouse continues to get funding because the monies they get a disability or they get their retirement. Well, when the veteran dies, they were only getting the retirement. They weren't getting both. Well, they were getting a percentage of both to make 100%. Well, these funds come from two different pools of money. So that was our fight there. Well, if they're coming from two different pools, they should still get, everything that's due to them, because the family member is very important, because a lot of veterans, when we come back, without that family member, we can be in a lot of trouble. And again, that's another reason, like we said, the VFW was put together, was so that we could get with a group of people that flat out understood, our mindset.
How does the VFW empower veterans returning that are eligible to join the VFW to become veteran leaders in their community?
So we have been reaching out to, our National Guardsmen. I know this past year we have a chair at the state level who sent us out a list of PA National Guardsmen who were deployed in Iraq or Afghanistan. And, the local post, my post 8430, we sent stockings back we sent, filled it up with Christmas stockings and sent it over to the ones that were serving. We do things while they're deployed. And also when they come back to Pennsylvania, we want to make sure we're there and welcoming them back home. Just like, some of us, I mean, when I came home, I wasn't welcomed, and that's no fault of anybody's. It's just the era. I mean, the time I came back, but, now we want to start making these veterans feel welcomed. And we know as veterans how important that is to feel, to be appreciated and to be welcomed back into the welcome back into the city. And that's how they become VFW members. Once you start showing the active duty or the guardsman or the reservist what you do, we're not just a canteen, a smoky bar, or a sports bar. Then they start becoming aware of what we do, and they want to be a part of that as well. So those are some things that we have been doing. I know the last couple of years since I've been involved. I'm sure we've done it in the past, but those are just some things that we keep pushing on. We go talk to them at their reserve units or 9/11. We've gone out there. And we just contribute to them, and even talk to their family members, because, the spouse, usually it's the wife, but now it's the husband. We talk to the spouses and say, hey, you can be an auxiliary member. And once they get involved in the auxiliary, then their spouse is now, they join the VFW and they start taking on those leadership roles as well. So we've done a forefront. So we have chairs at the department. The department commander appoints, and they send information out. It's all education. I mean, technology is so big nowadays that we need to utilize that, email, cell phones, Facebook, and that's how we're getting the word out there now. Back then they didn't have that information, and it's still a struggle trying to get these Vietnam era veterans to use the technology and to use social media. And I couldn't imagine a World War II veteran, trying to use Facebook or something. So, we adapt, we're taught to adapt and overcome. So we'll go to the World War II veteran and say, hey, look, we're doing this function. Are you able to attend? And if he's not, if he doesn't drive, we'll go pick him up, So, us younger veterans, we are adapting, and we are reaching out to all veterans in every aspect, and we're going to them. We're not sitting behind the bar. We're not sitting in our posts. Like Jim said, these are the four walls, but we need to get out there. So we've gone out there to them. And again, in Afghanistan and Iraq, we've sent them packages and all kind of stuff just to make them, hey, we're here. When you get back, please reach out to us.
So as a non-veteran, I've mentioned that multiple times, but as a non-veteran, how can I help the VFW?
Well, what we do at my post is, even with the veterans, non-veterans, social members, auxiliary, we try to figure out, okay, what's your skill set? How can we make you feel like you're needed? How can we make you feel important and part of what we're trying to do? Like, we build ramps for veterans that need wheelchair ramps for their houses. So we'll get a hold of people in the post and say, hey, are you able to do this? Do you have the skill set, the tools and stuff like that? We'll provide the materials. And usually it's done for free. 9 times out of 10, it's other than the cost of materials,
Right.
And we really try to make them, every member, no matter what level they're at, as far as, membership, we try to make them feel like they're important and part of the organization, even if they're not a quote unquote regular member. We still need their assistance and help, and greatly appreciate it.
So the idea is, when you become a member, it's a little bit of an expectation to be an active member. You're not just being a member to come and go bowling every once in a while. Like, you should come in and want to serve in some way into your community.
We would hope so.
Okay.
You can't really expect it from everybody, but we would hope that you would feel, you're joining a private organization, with high expectations, and we would hope that you're joining. It's a veterans post.
Yeah.
I don't like the word club, because to me, it's not a club, it's a post.
Okay.
That takes me back to the military aspect of it. And to me, if you're wanting to join my post and be part of my post, there's a reason you want to be there, and it should be for veterans. And anything you do or say to help veterans, that's great. And we need everybody to come in. And if you're not physically able to help, a lot of people, just, it's sad to say, but just the small games and stuff that happen in the post, just that in a roundabout way helps our veterans. Because we do have posts that don't have canteens and stuff like that, but those of us that have been cursed with canteens, we're stuck with them now, and that money is very helpful to the veterans, and secondly to the rest of the community.
Yeah, I would like to say, with the social members, my post, I'm very, very lucky that I have social members that have all kinds of different trades and backgrounds, whether it's IT stuff or it's an electrician or a plumber. They've not only helped my building itself, but veterans from my post that have a problem at their house or something like that. They go out of their way to try to help us. And generally that comes at maybe a free beer or two. They won't even take money from me to do that kind of stuff.
So it's kind of like having skin in the game in a way. You come into it because you want to participate, and because you're participating, you feel more ownership, more that thing we've talked about on the Scuttlebutt, this feeling of serving the community. And this is a great opportunity to do that.
I've had many conversations with some of my social members, and I'm talking about guys that are in their 30s and 40s, and they didn't serve, but they said, I wish I would have. Every time I come in here and I see what you guys do, and how the regular veterans, how we all interact with each other and talk with each other, and they say, well, I wish I would have served. I didn't, but you need anything, let me know. I'll do whatever I can for you.
That's great. Maybe this is my last question, but where do you see the VFW going from here? What's the next 10 to 20 years look like for the VFW?
So We, with the changes that are happening, I feel like it's gonna continue to grow. I know this year, because of COVID, it was such a bad year. We can't judge of what happened during COVID, but I can tell you, the state commander and I, Ron Peters, had a talk, and he told me out of all the 50 states plus all the European and all that other affiliations, that Pennsylvania had the highest community service across the VFW. And that says a lot for how Pennsylvania is going. We took a negative, and we were shut down the most, like we were completely like, Allegheny County, we just kept getting hammered with shutdowns. And, we took that not as a negative, but as another way to serve our community and to learn, like Brian did. We revamped our post, and we got back out into the community. And like Commander Peters said, we had the highest community service. And when he got that call from National, and he was just blown away, because he was like, wow, our VFW stepped up in a time of need. So I feel like, COVID taught us a lot. It taught us again about ourselves, going back to our roots. Like, Brian and Jim have said, it gave us a time to see, where do we want to go in the future? What's our mission statement, and how do we want to continue to move forward? Unfortunately, the Vietnam veterans, World War II veterans, I think I have one more left, are passing away, from Agent Orange and various other things, that us as younger members, we have to start taking that lead. And, we want to keep that history alive, but we also want to adapt and change with the upcoming years. We keep changing technology, and, the people keep changing, so we have to adapt. And that's what I see in the VFW in the future. Just looking at the reports and the incoming commanders that are coming up next year, I feel like, next year is going to be even a better year, because we learned from COVID. We had time to regroup. We're going to just keep going forward. And, with the leadership that we have in place right now, I feel like, we will be good moving forward. We just have to, keep getting the word out there. We need to educate the veterans of what we do, and we need to keep educating our community what we do, so that we can bring that membership in, and we can move forward and continue to help our veterans. Afghanistan, Iraq was 20 years or so, keeps going. I don't know if we're ever going to end. According to Biden, we are going to end, but who knows? What if something else happens? So we want to make sure we have that foundation, so when those veterans go into a conflict or a, overseas, that we are ready for them when they come home, and we can, with Jim, get that legislation put in place, so that our, veterans are taken care of by our government that which we served. So right. I feel like it's going to be a good year this year, 2021 and 2022. So I look forward to it.
Opening the playbook.
Yeah.
And I also, I echo pretty much what Jess said, but I was going to touch again on the legislation a little bit. Even though I'm the chair in the state, everybody that's a veteran, everybody that's in the VFW should learn a little bit about the legislation that's going on around out, and that helps you in membership, trying to get other members by telling them what we're fighting for, what we've already fought for and gained, and what we will continue to fight for. We have a thing is called Vfw Action Corps, which this is my plug. I highly encourage everybody to sign up for the Vfw Action Corps. You do not have to, you can be your civilian, your auxiliary, your regular post member. If you're 18 years old and you care about veterans at all and veterans families at all, go to vfw.org, scroll to the bottom, click on the Advocacy, and look up Action Corps and sign up. It's free. It gives you a weekly update on legislation that we're working on currently, and it also gives you a POW MIA update on a weekly basis, and it gives me that extra person on my shoulder when I go to Capitol Hill. Going there with 100 people and going there with 1,000 people, they're going to listen to me more with the more people I have, fighting on my back. So
right. That's great. Brian, any final thoughts here?
I just want to give a plug out. another thing with the VFW, and especially with civilians, not just regular veterans. The VFW has a VFW Riders Group motorcycle organization that civilians, if they join a post, can join the Riders Group. And again, it's a state thing, it's a national thing. I happen, next month I'll actually get tapped. I'll be running the west side of the state. Right now, District 27, which is Westmoreland County, they're starting a county-wide riders group. And again, if you want to help support veterans and you like motorcycles and want to ride with like-minded people in a riders group, that's a thing that's out there for you.
Do you ride motorcycles, Brian?
Just a little bit.
Can I get a sidecar, Ryan? I don't think they'll trust me in a motorcycle yet.
I trust myself on a motorcycle than as anybody else.
Yeah, and that was like one of the things the oncoming state commander Nate Smith, Commander Smith, who that's one of his projects coming in, is really promote the VFW Riders Group, because it enables us to get these young veterans. Okay, a lot of them do ride motorcycles. They come home from service and they got to get that adrenaline somehow. They ride motorcycles. They don't want to join a motorcycle club, but they want to be, out there on their bikes. And the VFW riding together with veterans, it's always a great thing when I can be with my brothers and we're out and about on a bike, and we talk about things. And there's also civilians, people that have never served, and they ride with us as well as supporters. And again, they're supporting veterans and basically motorcycle riding.
Mm-hmm.
Or sisters, Brian. Or sisters.
Right. Thanks, Jess. Sorry. It always corrects me on that.
Oh, guys, I've learned a lot over just this hour, and I'm really hoping that the audience takes a lot from this podcast. To step out to a VFW, to say hi, to step in, maybe become auxiliary or social member, to assist the VFW, and I'm sure that anybody listening in is probably interested in veteran issues or the military in general. So this takes us another step in that right direction of bridging the military-civilian divide and saying, hey, we have veterans that are coming back, active military that are transitioning, and they need help and they need assistance. And this is a great opportunity for people to be able to do that within our communities. I want to thank you all for spending the time with me today and educating me on what the VFW is and what it is not, and how it's evolving. I found this really, really interesting and educational. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Of course. And to our audience, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell on YouTube, and reach out to me if you would like to connect, and we will get back to another Scuttlebutt coming up next week. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us for another episode of the Scuttlebutt. I want to thank D&D Metal Recycling and Auto Salvage for their generous support and sponsorship of this program. You can find their locations, get quotes, and ask about availability at D&Dautosalvage.com. That's D&Dautosalvage.com. We'll see you next week here on the Scuttlebutt.